Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast, and in today's video we are going to be starting a new analysis series. We put out a vote for you guys if you wanted to Telltale or a Quantic Dream game, and overwhelmingly the victor was this game, Beyond Two Souls. Now, Jack, you've played Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human. How much do you know about this game, mate?
Incredibly little. So coming into it, all I've known is that from you, mate, you said that it's more linear than Quantic Dream games, that you can play it out of order, that Willem Dafoe's in it, and that's about it.
Yeah, like it's a game that I have very fond memories of, but in a weird way, out of the four main Quantic Dream games, it does fall bottom for me. Now, Fahrenheit is like a PS2 game when this came out in the PS3 era. And obviously back at that time I was on the Xbox 360, so I watched someone else play it on YouTube. So I managed to play this game way late. But yeah, I think the thing that bugged me the most, and it's something we will touch on throughout this series, is it's the chronological / remixed version. So when the game came out, you very much go through Jodie's life, and the chapters are in a jumbled order. I don't know if it tried to do the stylistic thing where it was like, oh, you're going to be a kid, now you're going to be an adult, now you're going to be a teenager. But it did take some of the sting out of it, because you almost know with certain side characters around you can't die in certain moments. So I wasn't a fan of it. Now, before I progress, I will say that a lot of people have been asking me, will I be playing the stream? Will I be doing the analysis in remixed or original order? Really weird, because original actually means remixed and remixed means original, because in the original it was jumbled, and then I think they heard the backlash and maybe brought out a chronological version of the game instead. A lot of people prefer that version, but my stream in this analysis will be doing it in the original order, so the jumbled version, simply because that was the game that was released, and I kind of want to capture this game and show it to you guys almost like in the way it came out, as it was intended to play, for the fairest assessment. So Jack, just initially, what do you think about that idea of making a game where the chapters are in a jumbled order?
Well, I mean, at this point, I've seen maybe 5 or 6 chapters, right? But I do have feelings on this even already. And conceptually, as an idea, I really like it. But I think considering the genre that we're dealing with, how the actions you take have repercussions and so forth, I think it becomes challenging, because you're dealing with a character in multiple sort of incarnations of their life. You therefore know that perhaps there's not so much jeopardy in certain chapters, because you know that you've already crossed them from in the future in a previous chapter. So I was interested to see how the game was going to handle that. But also, as a complete newbie to this game, I am already slightly struggling with what's going on. So I have lots of questions like, who is this Jodie girl? Why are the CIA so interested in her? My guess is because of this sort of power that she has, like this morphing into like some Aiden figure, and that makes me ask who Aiden is. It makes me think where this is going to go. And I feel like the jumping back and forth between different points, I'm thinking about even like the little CIA bits, is I'm like, okay, so how did it get to this point? And I feel like by the time I get to the end of this game, I just have a hunch that I'm going to prefer to play it chronologically.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment, and I think a lot of people feel similar. But we'll crack on. I mean, the first chapter we get to, mate, is just called Prologue, and it's just a bit of a monologue from Jodie saying, I was born with a strange gift. There's not too much to talk about. A little bit of random trivia for you without spoiling too much for you, because here's a random little side note. Jack is currently watching my stream, and he is stopping after every or before we record an analysis. So Jack, you're actually going to be in the dark for a lot of this, and you've not finished the game, so we will be doing an analysis where Jack can kind of predict where he thinks the game's going to go, so we're going to have a lot of fun with it. Usually we cover a lot of games you've already played, so it's kind of exciting that, you're playing a game, Jack, that you've not finished, so we're going to kind of like capture your raw emotions, which I love it when we do that on the channel. But sorry, random bit of trivia is that this chapter was like meant to take place, kind of like, you know, at the ending. So like, yeah, the game ends in a certain location and it was going to set it there, but they thought, oh, that might be a spoiler. So they kept it quite generic, where you've got kind of like her just like with this blue background or black background, I believe. One thing I kind of just want to comment on, because there's not too much to in this chapter, is that at this point we can kind of like go in the pause menu, look around and stuff. And this is something I commented to you, Jack, but one detail I quite like in these video games is the intricacies of like the display and menu. And we'll compare it to the other Quantic Dream games that we've covered on this channel, why not? But Detroit Become Human, admittedly, yeah, it's the later game, they had better tech. You've got this lovely kind of like menu where it's all sort of glitchy and it's white and you have all this code in the background, and you have Chloe, who's almost like your assistant for you personally. And it was just a really neat touch, one of the best gaming menus I've ever seen. And then Heavy Rain, which was actually 3 years before this game, did this concept where even when you would pause it, you would have like origami everywhere and there would be like little rain ripples in the screen and stuff. I don't know about you, mate, but do you equally find this one, I guess, a little on the basic bland side?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it would be harsh to compare it to, say, Detroit Become Human, but I mean, it's even like it's what you said with Heavy Rain, like that game come previous, right? And I think, well, with this one, because you've got her face predominantly covers the left-hand side, doesn't it? And it has that sort of hallmark, I'm going to call it like quarry quality to it, you know, with like the mocap where it looks like she's looking at the ceiling and not at you. Whereas when you play Detroit Become Human, Chloe's looking directly at you, which I think just makes it a little bit more immersive. And then besides that, it's just a dark background with like the lettering. But even with the in-between chapters, I could be going an absolute wrong path here, but I'm going out on a limb. But it sort of looks like DNA, like the way the line curves, and then you've got the lines, it's sort of like that double helix thing going on. But I also thought that potentially that line could literally just be like the purple trail that you get from Jodie to Aiden, you know, when you like morph into him and you go off and cause chaos or whatever you want to do. So yeah, like of the 3 games so far, I'd say the pause menu in this one is the weakest. I have to agree.
For sure. Let us know in the comment if you agrees with that, guys. We've got the next chapter, which is Broken, which is kind of like Jodie kind of like on the run a little bit. She's kind of sat in front of a cop who's also the same cop that can, you know, kill Luther in Detroit, and he's also Paco. You will see there's a lot of recycled assets in this game, a lot of the similar models you'll find in Heavy Rain and Detroit, which is kind of funny, and it really took me back. Like there's times where like you'll just sort of meet Todd at a point, and you know, from Detroit Become Human, you're like, oh wow, that's really interesting. But yeah, so yeah, we've got Lieutenant Sherman, and he's trying to talk to you, but you're being quite vague. And then we get Willem Dafoe that comes in after like the soldiers all pop in, and you kind of like don't know what she's done, but she's laid out a million bodies everywhere. So Jack, what were your kind of feelings at this point in time when you saw that chapter?
I really liked the cutaways for the flashbacks. I generally like it when that happens in video games, to try and like tell a story. Obviously still very much in the dark. My sort of like predictions just based off this chapter are rooted in perhaps the structure of the game, because I was thinking to myself, I know that this is quite jumbled up, right? But my theory is that almost this is very much near the present day, if not like, or like almost like current in the timeline. So I'm thinking to myself, surely at some point it's got to be chronological, because surely you can't play the last chapter of the game somewhere towards the beginning or in the middle. So my theory is that we will play in a jumbled order up until that point, or to the events just after the Broken chapter, if that makes any sense to you. And then my other prediction of this chapter is based off Willem Dafoe. Now, Willem Dafoe has got quite a history in gaming, funnily enough. So, like, for me, as a Bond fan, he was like a villain in Everything or Nothing. But he was also a villain in a game that we played on the channel called 12 Minutes. And then obviously beyond that, we know that he's a villain in like the Spider-Man film. So early prediction from me, I can't see him being a good guy at this point, Nathan. I feel like ultimately he's going to be a bit of a wrong-un. So we'll have to see if I'm right on that front.
Hold my tongue, but you heard it here first. Jack thinks Professor Dawkins is a bad guy. So yeah, we'll put a pin on that one. But no, it's certainly interesting, and I totally got what you mean about the timeline thing. It's a bit like, if you look at the classic film Forrest Gump, right, you almost think that the film's going to end with him on the bench almost, but that's almost like nearly the halfway point. Then it turns out that Forrest Gump like goes away and does a bunch more other stuff after he's been on that bench, you know, which is like where the iconic film begins. So yeah, it's certainly interesting. I won't say too much, but yeah, like I completely get your point. So yeah, I mean, we'll kind of just move on really. This is the experiments, the next chapter, and this is truly the chapter kind of designed almost as a tutorial to help you play as Aiden. So you kind of have to go around the other room where there's this woman, Kathleen, and you can have a bunch of fun. You can possess a colleague, Greg, I believe his name is, although Cole snaps him out of it, one of the other scientists that we'll get to know and love throughout the game. And there's kind of two ways you can go about this chapter. Obviously, Jack, I can't ask you throughout this analysis series, what did you do? Because you're watching my playthrough, because this was a PlayStation exclusive. But really interesting to see. You can be compliant. You can just say the shapes, knock a few things over. When Kathleen gets a little scared, you can be like, okay, yeah, we'll call it quits there. Or you can have a lot of fun with it, which is what I tended to do when I played this game. So yeah, I was knocking the table over. This woman was like fearing for her life. Poor girl, by the way. So I want to ask you, which kind of play style would you have gone for? Would you have been as chaotic as I was? And also, I know you're not the one playing it, but what do you kind of make of this Aiden power?
I think in terms of how I would have played it, you know me, I typically play it quite straight in my blind playthrough. So I'd have probably kept the more chaotic things in like future playthroughs and stuff. But I did look into this and I thought it was wild how like it said that you can actually strangle Kathleen. Like that was like the alternative option. Like, I think you didn't. I think you just had Kathleen terrified, right?
Yeah.
But it said that the alternative was that you can strangle. I was like, Jesus Christ! Like that's a really intense start to a game. So I'd have probably played it straight there. In terms of the power, I think it's like I said at the top, more questions than answers. You see a bleeding nose at the end. I'm going to just call it out. Life is Strange. And actually, while I'm talking about another little game that I'm going to call out here that it reminded me of was Murdered Soul Suspect, because in this particular chapter you can like possess people, can't you? So, and that's something that you can do in that game as well. So there's just something about like the mid 2010s. There was like this obsession with possession and souls and that sort of thing. But yeah, as far as like how she obtains it, I don't know. I mean, she said, I think in the opening that she was born with it. So it makes me wonder if it's going to be explained at all, or if it's something that we just accept as a thing in this game. But overall, as a chapter, I think it was, you know, pretty good. I think it was quite a neat idea of like how you use the cards to differentiate, you know, into what choice to make sure that it matches up to the card. And it again made me ask questions like, okay, how does this Dr. Cole and Professor Dawkins come into it? Are they tied to the CIA? What's their motives for using Jodie? So, yeah, I think I almost saw it as like you say, a tutorial chapter for using Aiden, but also warming up the story.
Oh, for sure. I'll get more into kind of like the Aiden gameplay kind of in later chapters, where I sort of found that I struggled with it sometimes, because I do have like mixed feelings on the actual controls of Aiden, but as a concept I actually really like it. The way that, you know, you're tethered to Jodie as Aiden, but you can go through walls and you can possess people and you can knock things over. Like, it is fairly unique. I don't really know of too much like that. And one thing that although I say that, yeah, Beyond Two Souls does fall down the pecking order in terms of the list, by no means it's not a bad game. I think Quantic Dream are amazing, and like they'll put so much effort into a game that they don't really miss the mark. It's just that one has to be the weakest, unfortunately, if you rank them, and for me it is this one. But one thing I do really want to credit this game, mate, is, and I don't know if you knew this, but it's, I think, the only game really that you can actually play in Quantic Dream multiplayer, like, you know, not split screen, but like kind of couch co-op's the term I'm looking for. Where someone with like a controller would be Jodie, and then someone with their phone could connect to the PlayStation and play as Aiden. I'm unsure. I've never seen it of how it works. I've not looked at gameplay if like you can control both at the same time, or if like, you know, you still take turns like you do if you were playing single mode. It probably is that version, to be honest. But still, though, really cool that you could be playing, if you wanted to play this game with Laura, mate, you could have Laura, like, you could be Jodie walking around, and then Laura could be, like, Aiden strangling Kathleen. So, yeah, like, what do you think of that?
As a feature, really neat. I think I'd have to see the practicalities of it, because, like, you know, in, like, co-op games, how it's almost... Let's just take, like, the Dark Pictures, like, shared story for a split second, is that if one of the players reaches a certain point, it almost carries the second player forward. So I wonder if like it's a similar thing with Beyond Two Souls, where perhaps when Aiden isn't required, the second player just can't play the game at all, or whether he can just roam about as and when Jodie's exploring the environment also. But like I say, I'd have to see it to sort of like really have like a judgment on it. But you know, I think it's good to have that sort of interactivity and to include more players in these games for sure.
Possibly so, mate. And yeah, like, just to end this chapter on your point, the nosebleed, very Max Caulfield. But yeah, the other one I would compare it to as well, mate, is Norman Jayden, so from the Heavy Rain. So they probably went for a similar thing with that one. We'll go over to the next chapter. It's called The Embassy. Now, for me, it was quite daunting because this is a massive sort of like timeline jump. Like, I know we've had like Broken, where we've seen the power where she's on the run from something, and then we were a child being like a lab rat kid. But now suddenly we're a part of the CIA. So I'm just going to give you the mic, mate. What were your thoughts and feelings? And did you enjoy this chapter at all? Because like you're a big James Bond fan, and I wonder if maybe you got to feel that sense of like you're playing a little bit of a James Bond game, maybe.
Not quite along those lines. I think my first point was I just loved the location. Like obviously we've only had 3 locations at this point, like the sort of the quite drab police station, and then that sort of quite cold and clinical experimental rooms. But then again, there was like the bedroom as well at the start of the experiment, and then you've got this again, this like very grand embassy, and it was great, like all the people scattered about, all very smart, stylish. I liked it. I was wondering that again, I'm coming back to that sort of that the questions, because it's in a jumbled order. You're thinking, okay, so she is with the CIA. Why are they breaking in, or why are they going to this place to get these files? You know, where has the story got to where they've got Jodie and they've got her in to serve this purpose? Because that's essentially, if I'm correct in saying, mate, that's essentially what you're doing, isn't it? You're going off, you go into the cubicle, you become Aiden, and you've then got to find a means to get upstairs, whether you can possess people or not possess people, but you've got to get into this safe to get these files to write down, right, for presumably some sort of like espionage purpose. So yeah, I think for me, I almost looked at it as like visually very like pleasing. And I think it was almost like, okay, let's test the Aiden things that you've learned, you know, gameplay wise. Let's put it into practice in this chapter. That's sort of how I saw it.
Very well. And yeah, like I do agree with it. Massive timeline sort of jump. It's sort of a little bit, you know, maybe unanswered of why they're there. It kind of just throws you straight in. One thing I will say, which is kind of a sentiment and a theme of this game that I strongly feel about, which maybe makes it fall down the pecking order, is the fact that with Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human, it's got a consistent theme and flavour. with this one, because like you're going through her life at different stages, it almost tries to be too many flavors. And it's almost like me asking you, would you rather have like a vanilla ice cream, a chocolate ice cream, or a vanilla chocolate banana strawberry caramel honeycomb mint ice cream? You know, sometimes all the flavors isn't necessarily a good thing, you know what I mean? And sometimes I think this like game does slightly lack an identity because it tries to be too many things at once, maybe. But you know, maybe I'm alone in that sentiment, I'm unsure. But with this chapter though, mate, it is really interesting because what's cool is that there are multiple ways to complete it as well. You can kind of be Aiden, you can kind of like mess with the security guard and, you know, knock his coffee over so he doesn't see what's going on. And then I think what I did is I got Aiden to do the task for me. Another thing as well is that you can actually possess the shake, and you can have the shake just go up there and open it. Apparently there's a failed method where you can try and get a guard to do it, but the security guy's like, what are you doing? You're not granted to do that, mate. So, you know, then you've got to kind of go through it again. But there's a lot of trophies at stake here, so I just kind of like it when they give you multiple methods to get to the right formula. And the last thing I kind of want to mention, mate, is that there is a little bit of an Easter egg where at one point when you're doing your mission, you can kind of get Aiden to kind of go in a room and you can overhear Ryan say something along the lines of, if she fails, she'll be captured and tortured. And another agent says like, oh wow, you've got a lack of empathy, and he's like, it's my job, I have to be. So you don't know too much about Ryan, but that paints a little bit of a picture of Ryan for you.
Damn. Another thing I noticed as well, on like the finishing screen when you like finish the chapter, I'm assuming that there's some sort of time limit as well, mate, because one of the things it said 98% finished the mission. So do you know if there's a time limit whereby if you haven't done it, or maybe you do it incorrectly or something, the game still continues regardless?
I gather Jodie might sort of get like some anxiety and leave, because I think there are things where you could leave early potentially as Jodie if you can't crack it. But yeah, so like you can actually fail this, but it does give you a few tries. Like you can actually fail it a bunch and then still go up and then find a way. And you'll always be able to just be the shake and just get into the room, you know, so it's pretty foolproof in that sense. The other thing I was actually going to say as well, though, is whether I've missed a trick here, but I didn't actually understand the ending or understand what it was about when that woman came in the cubicle and took the notes from you. I don't know if she was on your team or against you. I'm pretty sure, spoiler alert, that she doesn't come back. I can't remember. So I'm just a bit like, what was this chapter? But I might be wrong in that sense. I'm still streaming as we're recording this, so I'm going to have to see if something comes of it. Because it, like, again, I've watched this game when it came out. I played it again in 2018, and it's like, you know, 7 odd years later, I'm playing it again. So a lot of this is foggy. I forgot so much about this game, and I'm kind of redigging it up kind of thing. But still, though, very fun chapter, though, mate.
I was going to say, it looked as well like she talked a guard down as well. So my instinct was that she was an ally, but then because we wasn't introduced to her at the beginning of the chapter, or it was even alluded to, it was literally just Jodie and Ryan walking in. I was thinking, okay, like how does this woman fit into the fold? Because she's taken our notes, presumably talked this guard down that was going to come in and see what Jodie was doing. But yeah, a bit of a question mark, mate. We'll have to see.
But we'll skip ahead, mate, to our next chapter, The Party, which is probably going to be like one of the stronger chapters. Certainly my favourite that we'll probably talk about in this video, I reckon. Because there's a lot here. There's quite a lot of branching. There's a few endings to it. It will actually have a ripple effect where it will affect future chapters, which is really cool. So the whole premise of it is, mate, is, you know, you go to this party because like Dawkins has like a colleague who's got a kid who's a similar age. So you're forced in with these other kids basically, and you have this poetry book to give to them. But when the parents leave, they're not as nice as, you know, or like they thought, you know. And there's alcohol, there's drugs, there's music, and you're clearly out of your comfort zone. I'll just give you the floor, mate. What did you think of the chapter?
I've got to say it was my favourite of the ones that I've seen so far, and a little bit of a little tidbit for you as well, mate. Having just finished As Dusk Falls, which, as we both know, is sort of the people that made it. They're almost like a faction of Quantic Dream, or people that left Quantic Dream and then made their own company. It's so strange because I watched this chapter, and then the following day I jumped into As Dusk Falls, and then I saw an environment that looked so similar to that front room where they were like having the party and stuff. It was really weird. So yeah, things I've got down here is that I don't know if it's like a character quirk or something I've just noticed early doors, but Jodie seems to like complaining about her dresses because she mentions it in the embassy and then literally the following chapter, and I'm sort of sat there thinking like, okay, like this is obviously something that follows her throughout life because there's been the big time jump here. But the overriding thing was, yeah, this girl just does not fit in here at all. Like, the gift that she gives over, everyone thought it was lame. Just her general shyness and body language and behaviour, everybody was more relaxed. They was clearly into drugs and drinking, and she wasn't. They were goading her, like asking what her power was. And then they obviously like get very aggressive. And then there was this one particular girl in the glasses. She was an absolute bitch, wasn't she? Like, she was saying how her powers were BS. And then they ended up like throwing her in the cupboard, didn't they? And it was sort of more of an excuse to use Aiden again, which I would say in this instance, mate, I definitely would have been more chaotic. But I think I would have refrained from going too far, like killing them, you know. But I'd want to like really scare them for what they did to Jodie there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I went really chaotic, and it got to the point where my stream actually asked me to stop. I was like, I'm sorry guys, I got carried away. So I'm really sorry if I scarred anyone in that chapter, but you know what? I hate bullies. And yeah, it's like these kids are the worst. You've obviously got the popular main girl, who I can't remember, it's escaping me, but someone told me she is a similar sort of model of Chloe, the AI girl in Detroit Become Human, which I can kind of see. So, you know, I think it might be her. And then, yeah, like you had the British guy who just was really gropey, just met this girl and was like, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm going to try and be with you. And when you reject him, he's like, oh, she's been following me like a puppy all night. So yeah, absolute arsehole. But yeah, and then the one to top it did not like my rock music. So yeah, the glasses girl you mentioned, I was so happy I threw a sofa at her skull. So yeah, like, but yeah, it's really cool because like there are 4 endings to this chapter. One being the one where you just leave and walk out the door, and then, you know, you kind of like just leave and you won't kind of like mess with them at all. But there's 3 different kind of endings, mate, and I'm going to read them out to you. There's the one I had where I burnt the house down and the mum calls you the devil when she gets home. The other one is you can make the kids unconscious, which I think I did for some of them. I think I might have got like a half and half thing where like the mum runs in the house and finds them. And then there's one where like no one gets harmed, but they're all scared, and the mum will always kind of go to the mum. So they're fairly similar, but there's kind of like 3 different branches of that. So it's really cool they have that, mate. And the only sort of thing I have to mention on top of that is that there is an Easter egg. If you was to closely look at all the picture frames around the house, it's of all the people in the Quantic Dream team, which is kind of like a nice little touch, mate.
Yeah, so the thing I was going to ask, but I think you've answered it there, so that it doesn't actually matter how you behave with them in the early stages, right? Regardless, they always turn on you and they always put you in the cupboard.
They always put you in the cupboard. It's just how you react to the changes with that big choice that you had, and then how far you go as well. And this will have, you know, like very minor but still pretty intricate, cool details of like what happens in future chapters. Next interview, nothing special. It's called First Interview, where we kind of like go into Dawkins' office and, you know, he asks us to like show the power, maybe draw Aiden. Not much to comment on at all, lad, but what did you make of it? And what did you make of the drawing of Aiden?
It was just like those typical kids' drawings, isn't it? Where he's got to turn around and go, oh, this is good, when it's actually a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably the weakest chapter, but then I don't think it was there to be anything significant. I mean, you are literally just going in and meeting Nathan for the first time, aren't you? You draw Aiden. One little interesting tidbit though is that you see scratches on her arms, and then she turns around and says that the monsters did that. So really confused as to where that's going. I don't want to say that this is gonna lean into like self-harm or anything like that. I don't know if it's going to lean into domestic abuse. I don't know if it's as a result of like a loss of control with Aiden. I really don't know. But yeah, it was sort of like a question mark that I had coming out of that chapter.
Very well. And yeah, no, it's a good point. And don't you worry, that one will be answered. So you will pretty much see that soon, I think, actually, mate. So yeah, and you know, us talking about kind of the different lengths of these chapters, they're very inconsistent, and I'll rarely try and kind of like break the fourth wall or whatever, but I just want to highlight how much of a nightmare it makes for this analysis series, because typically we would kind of plan, yeah, let's just do the next 8 chapters with this one. Like when I streamed part 1, I think I played like above 10 chapters, and in subsequent ones, some chapters take over an hour, and it's like I'll only actually play 2 chapters within a 2-hour space. So yeah, it's just inconsistent all over the shop, and this is just another one of like you can literally whiz through it in like 5 minutes. But we will kind of end it on the final one, which is a little bit of a bulkier one, where it's called Welcome to the CIA, where essentially, again, it's just kind of like a massive way of throwing in a tutorial with learning how the QTEs work. There's different things such as obstacle courses, there's combat training to like learn the fight mechanics, there's like a yoga section where you can like learn how to heal with Aiden, which is kind of like a really like kind of important QTE you're going to need to learn. There's a shooting section, a stealth section, even a mathematics section, which is interesting. So, mate, take the floor. What did you think of all of this?
Yeah, it felt more tutorial based. Looking as an observer and having seen Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human, of course, I must say that I don't know if this is like a PC thing or whether it would be like a more simple or controllers or whatever, but the QTEs look a bit more difficult or a bit more harder to process in this one. I'm talking particularly about fight sequences. The impression that I got is that you really had to judge it by Jodie's body as to what way you move the analog stick or the mouse in your case. But also the healing one as well with like the orbs. Like I'm just sort of wondering how on controller you bring them together, like the 2 analog sticks. But sometimes like the visuals on screen, I don't know, I just felt it a little bit awkward, I guess. I thought it was like a little bit difficult to process as just like a casual observer as to what you would do.
For sure. And that's one thing. So I originally played this on a controller. I found it a lot easier because it's like if you have to move the 2 sort of like little orbs, you do it with left analog, right analog. With this one, I'm using WASD for the left one and my mouse with the right one. So like I'm still adapting to mouse and keyboard. Like, you know, I'm still adapting to PC gaming, to be honest. So I did struggle with it. And what you say about the combat training is completely right, because we used to sort of like maybe these Telltale Walking Dead games where if you want to kind of dodge a zombie, there'll be an arrow that literally goes, oh yeah, you need to go left. Or like, you know, let's say Heavy Rain, for example, where like it will come on screen with X or square or R2, and it kind of tells you the function. This one is very visual. It's very depending on you knowing what to do. You have to kind of just move Jodie in the direction that she's going. So like if she's dodging to the left, you've got to go left as well. But I did find there were times where it was super tricky. I'm talking particular instances where in my eyes, it almost looks like she's going like diagonal, say like bottom right. And I'm like, do I go right? Do I go down? I'll chance on one, then I get it wrong, you know? So although I like the ambition and the concept, there were times where I found it quite frustrating. And kind of another thing I will say, I haven't really encountered it yet at this point, but we will sort of cover it when we do our second video. I fail some QTEs, and like again, I know like I often sound sorry on this channel sometimes, like blaming controllers and heartbeat sequences, but there are times where it is like ridiculous. Like there are points where it gives you sort of like a second or two to kind of like hold something. And like say like the healing one, you have to like click the mouse and full on drag it to far right as you can, and it might take 5 seconds for it to lock in. But some of the the QTEs give you like a singular second to do it, and it's like, well, that was impossible. So I found the QTEs quite janky, and it's something like in Until Dawn with the don't move sequences, where it's something you're gonna have to get good at fast, because you can lose people if you don't. So yeah, like, but then again, mate, it made my stream chaotic, it made it interesting. So yeah, that's what I've got to say on that one.
Yeah, I feel like this is the perfect point. I mean, obviously, I've still got all the rest of the game to see, so like, this could possibly change, but I can already see how this game is like a bridge of Heavy Rain and Detroit, because I almost look at Heavy Rain as like quite a grounded, gritty game, right? Because you're dealing with like a serial killer, murders X, Y, and Z, and you've like, it's, there's not really that fantastical elements or anything like that. You go into this game, it's also got that sense of realism to it, but because of the Aiden thing, you've got a more sort of sci-fi fantastical element to it, which then leads into Detroit Become Human, which is definitely more like sci-fi generated. But even going beyond that, you can see potentially maybe where Quantic Dream learned their lessons, because you can see the Heavy Rain influence when you're dealing with the characters and you see like the lines or the words next to their head for like dialogue purposes and stuff like that. And maybe they stretched a little bit too far with the QTEs on this game. But then you sort of think forward again to Detroit Become Human, and it feels like that they got it about right, in terms of like the visuals on screen for the QTEs, the timings, like the dialogues and all that sort of thing. So yeah, like so far, even just from these first few chapters, I can see how almost like the progression of Quantic Dream in a way, in like their making of a game and like themes and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, like, I know Quantic Dream can make multiple games at a time, so it would be a bit naive to assume, okay, they finished Heavy Rain, they're starting Beyond Two Souls. And when they finish Beyond Two Souls, okay, they're starting Detroit Become Human. We clearly know this isn't evident, because a Kara tape came out during, like, when Heavy Rain got released. So we know they work on these games for quite some time. But this is definitely the shortest release span. Like, Heavy Rain comes out in 2010, this game comes out 3 years later. So maybe there were elements where they were rushed by a publisher or something. I'm unsure about the specifics. But yeah, you can sort of see how much they've evolved when you look at this game and then you look at their next project, Detroit Become Human. I do agree on that one, mate. A little bit of an Easter egg for this chapter could kind of end the analysis on is that Ryan is in a Chevrolet Cruze, which came out in 2010 when the chapter was actually set in 2007 actually. So either Ryan's from the future or Quantic Dream dropped the ball on that one. So yep, shame on you guys for adding that model of car in there. But yeah, I mean, that's the only Easter egg. One thing I do want to say is that like you kind of get that section where the stealth scene, which I enjoy. There's a trophy for completing it first time. I've never in my life had it. I find it a little janky and quite frustrating to do. I always get caught, but eventually I get there. But I do quite like the ending where Ryan, all cocky, puts the gun to your head, like, oh, you didn't think of everything. And then she's gonna possess the guard, he puts the gun up to Ryan's head, and I'm like, yeah, fuck you, Ryan. So yeah, like, quite a cool way to end the chapter. So yeah, like, yeah, you'll have to kind of see how the rest of the game goes, lad. But like, anything to comment on there, but also just general thoughts and feelings. Do you think at this sort of rate, with the way the game's going, that you're going to probably share my sentiment in ranking it underneath Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human?
Yes. So far, I do think it will fall beneath. But I'm hoping that, once I start to put pieces together and I see more chapters, that it does go up in my books. Not that I think it's bad by any means. But I was just blown away by Heavy Rain. It's the sort of genre that I like, and Detroit Become Human. I mean, there's so many genres within that, but also just visually and the branching, it's so well put together. So I do think it probably will fall beneath. As far as the chapter goes as well, yeah, that stealth section, it really is just like a coming together, isn't it, of like the things that you've learned, because you do the exercises more than once, don't you? Whether it's the monkey bars, the hurdles, all of the fighting scenes and stuff like that. It's almost just gearing you up. You know, it's almost like you are Jodie. It's gearing her up for going out into the world, but it's also gearing you up as a player for QTEs and how to like play the game and stuff like that. But as for that Ryan figure, yeah, I wonder if it's going to be a case where he could become an antagonist. But my suspicion at this point is it could be like that typical senior cop, junior cop dynamic, you know, where he at first is a little bit cold to you. You know, you could say like Hank and Connor in Detroit, where he's a little bit cold to you. He's not really convinced about you, but over time you prove yourself and then he starts to warm to you. Maybe that's my theory so far, because I'm going to try and stick that it's going to be Willem Dafoe that's going to be the villain or like an antagonist in this plot. So we'll have to wait and see. I was going to say, mate, is there like alternate ways that you can finish that stealth section, or is it very much like one path is like the best path?
I think there is alternative because but like not much. Like in the sense that you can crawl underneath that container, can't you? But you can also kind of go through the center bit. And something I didn't really actually try and think to do is you could probably possess guards and do stuff with them, I'm unsure. So there's probably a few ways you can go around it. And it's interesting because there will sort of be chapters or a chapter that definitely sticks out in my mind where you have to kind of use these mechanics. So yeah, just like a nice little tutorial to get through that one. And yeah, like it does a solid job of giving you different varieties of way to kind of get to the end goal, a little bit like we saw in the embassy chapter. So I do kind of rate that from this game.
Good stuff, mate. I've only got that one more point to add, but it's not about the game at all. It's sort of like a outsidey point. So
yeah, no problem. What is it, Sladdy?
So basically, a little bit of trivia for you here, and this is as recent as this year in January 25. But Ellen Page, the person who obviously plays Jodie in this game, apparently acquired the rights for Beyond Two Souls for a brand new TV series, mate. So there you go, a little bit of
really. So like
TV for you.
That's interesting. So like Elliot Page now is obviously really fond of this experience that they've actually gone and bought the video game or like the rights to kind of revisit it.
The TV series, yeah. I was going to say, is it going to be chronological or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, especially if they stick to the exact thing. So yeah, there definitely is merit in having it as a TV sort of show or movie or whatever. Like it could work. But the thing I want to mention is it's really lovely to see that like an actor has like got a fond memory and experience of a game, because I saw a recent video clip of like Rami Malek talking about Until Dawn, and he kind of just openly admits like, oh yeah, I just needed money at the time. Apparently it's doing really well. But it sucks to see it do so well because I don't get any revenue from it, and I'm like, oh, Rami Malek, man, you're killing me. But you know, I get it. You're an actor, you need your work. But that's actually really pleasant to hear that Elliot Page like has got that and had a really lovely time on set. So yeah, that's good to hear, man. But very well, guys. So we're gonna end the chapter there. Jack is gonna watch some more of my streams. So join us next time, where you know, I don't even want to spoil the kind of levels he's about to go through. But yeah, Jack's going to get through that, and then we'll go to the next analysis. So comment down below what you thought of these chapters, guys, what you think of our theories. And if you're a fan of choice-based games and other Quantic Dream games, be sure to scroll through our channel, hit like, and subscribe to find more content like that. We have done a very similar analysis like we have for this one, but for Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human. So be sure to check those playlists out. But until then, guys, we will see you in the next one. Thank you for joining.
See you later.